She was begging on the street corner, barefoot, skeletal, trembling in the rain, and he almost walked past her, until their eyes met. 3 years. 3 years since she vanished without a word, leaving him with a newborn and a shattered heart. Now she was here, broken beyond recognition, collapsing into the arms of the man she once abandoned. But what broke him wasn't finding her. It was discovering why she left. Watch until the end. Comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The storm came without warning. One moment, the Seattle skyline glittered beneath a pale autumn sun. The next, clouds swallowed the city whole, and rain fell in sheets so thick that Lucas Grant could barely see the road ahead. His windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour as his black Mercedes crept through downtown traffic. He should have stayed at the office. His assistant had warned him the weather forecast showed severe thunderstorms rolling in from the coast, but Lucas had promised his son. 3-year-old Noah had been asking about the dinosaur exhibit at the Pacific Science Center for weeks, and Lucas had already canceled twice due to work emergencies. Not today. Today, he would be the father Noah deserved. The traffic light ahead turned red, and Lucas eased his foot onto the brake. Rain hammered against the roof of his car like 1,000 tiny fists. Through the blur of water cascading down his window, he could make out the shapes of pedestrians scrambling for cover. Umbrellas turned inside out, newspapers held over heads, people pressing themselves against building walls. And then he saw her. A woman on the corner, sitting on a piece of flattened cardboard that was rapidly dissolving into mush. She wasn't running for cover like the others. She wasn't even trying to shield herself from the rain. She just sat there, a cardboard sign clutched in her skeletal hands, her head bowed as water streamed down her matted hair. Lucas's first instinct was pity. Seattle had its share of homeless population. He passed them every day on his commute. He'd learned, like most city dwellers, to acknowledge them with a nod, sometimes drop a few bills, but ultimately keep moving. The city had programs, shelters, resources. He paid his taxes. He donated to charities. He did his part. But something made him look again. Maybe it was the way she sat so still, as if the storm couldn't touch her because nothing could hurt her more than whatever already had. Maybe it was the slight tremor in her shoulders that had nothing to do with cold. Maybe it was simply fate, that mysterious force that Lucas had never believed in until this very moment. The woman lifted her head, and Lucas Grant's world stopped spinning. Even through the rain, even through the grime that coated her hollow cheeks, even through the 3 years and countless nightmares that separated this moment from the last time he'd seen her face, he knew. He knew those eyes. That shade of green that had haunted his dreams. The slight upturn at the corners that used to crinkle when she laughed. Eyes that had once looked at him with such love, such promise, such forever. Eyes that now held nothing but emptiness. "No," Lucas whispered. His hands gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. "No, no, no, no." A car horn blared behind him. The light had turned green. Lucas didn't move. More horns. Angry shouts muffled by rain and rolled-up windows. Someone pulled around him, their middle finger visible through the downpour. Lucas didn't see any of it. He was already throwing open his door, already stumbling out into the storm, already running toward the corner where his past sat begging for spare change. "Ava?" His voice cracked on her name, a name he hadn't spoken aloud in 3 years, a name he'd trained himself to forget, to bury, to pretend had never existed because remembering hurt too much. The woman's head snapped up. For one terrible second, Lucas saw recognition flash across her gaunt face, followed immediately by pure primal terror. She scrambled backward, her bare feet slipping on wet concrete. The cardboard sign fell from her hands, its message, "Anything helps. God bless," smearing in the rain. "Ava, wait!" But she was already trying to run, her legs too weak to carry her, her body too broken to escape. She made it 3 steps before she crumpled, her knees hitting the pavement with a sound that made Lucas's stomach lurch. He caught her before her face could hit the ground. She weighed nothing. That was his first coherent thought as he gathered her into his arms. She weighed absolutely nothing, this woman who had once filled every corner of his life, who had once been his entire world. She was bones and skin and rain-soaked rags, and when she looked up at him, her eyes couldn't seem to focus. "Lucas." Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse and broken. "You can't. I can't. He'll—" "Who?" Lucas demanded. "Who'll what? Ava, what happened to you? Where have you been? Why did you—" But she was shaking her head, tears mixing with rain on her sunken cheeks. "You have to leave. You have to go. If he sees you with me. Noah. Oh God, Noah." The mention of their son's name made Lucas's blood run cold. "Noah is fine," he said quickly. "Noah is safe. I've got him. I've had him this whole time. Ava, look at me. Look at me." He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. Up close, the damage was even worse than he'd feared. Dark circles like bruises beneath her eyes. A scar along her hairline that hadn't been there before. Cracked lips, visible ribs, the unmistakable signs of prolonged starvation. "What happened to you?" he asked again, his voice breaking. "I thought you were dead. I thought... The police said they found your car in the river. They found your blood. They said..." "Had to," she gasped. "Had to make it look real. Had to disappear. For Noah. For you. He said he'd kill. He said if I didn't leave, if I ever came back..." Her eyes rolled back in her head. "Ava? Ava!" Her body went limp in his arms. Lucas didn't think, didn't hesitate. He scooped her up and ran for his car, ignoring the rain that soaked through his $1,000 suit, ignoring the traffic that had ground to a halt around his abandoned Mercedes, ignoring everything except the unconscious woman in his arms and the single thought screaming through his mind, "She didn't leave me. She didn't abandon us. Someone took her away." The drive to Swedish Medical Center took 7 minutes. It felt like 7 hours. Lucas broke every traffic law in the book, his hand pressed to the horn as he wove through downtown traffic. Ava lay in the passenger seat, her head lolled against the window, her breathing so shallow he kept reaching over to check her pulse. "Stay with me," he kept saying. "Ava, stay with me. Don't you dare die. Not now. Not after everything. You hear me? You don't get to die." She didn't respond. At the hospital, Lucas threw his car into the emergency lane and carried Ava through the sliding doors himself. The waiting room fell silent as he burst in, a man in a soaking wet business suit cradling what appeared to be a homeless woman, shouting for help. "I need a doctor. Someone help me. She collapsed. She needs..." Nurses swarmed around him. Gurneys appeared. Voices overlapped, firing questions he couldn't answer. "What's her name?" "Ava Monroe." "Any medical conditions we should know about?" I don't know. I haven't seen her in 3 years." "Is she a drug user?" "No, I don't think... God, I don't know anything." "Sir, you need to step back. Let us work." But Lucas couldn't step back. He followed the gurney as far as they would let him, watching through a small window as doctors surrounded Ava, as machines beeped and IVs were inserted and monitors flickered to life. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, he pulled it out. 6 missed calls from Mara, his assistant. A dozen text messages. "Where are you?" "The Henderson meeting started 20 minutes ago. Lucas, this is a $50 million deal. Call me." "What's going on? Are you okay?" Lucas stared at the messages for a long moment. Then he typed a single response. "Cancel everything. I don't know when I'll be back." He turned off his phone and returned to the window. 3 hours later, a doctor finally emerged. Lucas had worn a path in the waiting room floor, pacing back and forth until other patients started giving him nervous looks. He'd called his housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, to pick up Noah from daycare. He'd left a voicemail for his lawyer, his words garbled and probably nonsensical. He'd done everything he could think to do, and none of it had helped. "Mr. Grant?" He spun around. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair, approached him with a tablet in her hands. "How is she? Is she going to be okay? Can I see her?" The doctor held up a calming hand. "She's stable. We've got her on IV fluids and nutrition. The good news is there's no immediate threat to her life." "And the bad news?" The doctor's expression softened with sympathy. "She's severely malnourished. Her body mass index is dangerously low. She's been starving for what appears to be months. She's also showing signs of physical trauma, both recent and old. Healed fractures in her left arm and 2 ribs, scarring on her back consistent with what? The doctor hesitated. With repeated assault. Lucas felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. He reached for the wall, steadying himself as nausea rolled through him. Someone's been hurting her, he said. It wasn't a question. It appears so, yes. We've also found evidence of extreme psychological trauma. When she regained consciousness briefly, she became extremely agitated, paranoid. She kept asking about someone named Noah. Our son. The doctor's eyebrows rose. Your son. She's my wife. My ex-wife. Lucas ran a hand through his wet hair, struggling to find words. She disappeared 3 years ago. Police thought she was dead. I thought she was dead. I've been raising our son alone this whole time, and now he couldn't finish. The doctor studied him for a long moment. Mr. Grant, based on what we're seeing, your wife has been through something horrific. Wherever she's been, whoever she's been with, it wasn't voluntary, and it wasn't kind. She needs medical care, psychiatric support, and most importantly, she needs to feel safe. She's safe now, Lucas said fiercely. I'll make sure of it. I believe you. But I need you to understand, recovery from this kind of trauma takes time. Months, maybe years. She's not going to be the woman you remember, at least not right away. Lucas thought of the woman on the corner, the terror in her eyes when she'd recognized him, the way she'd tried to run. Can I see her? The doctor nodded. She's asking for you. Met. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of monitoring equipment. Ava lay in the narrow bed, swimming in a hospital gown that somehow made her look even smaller. An IV dripped steadily into her arm. Her eyes were closed when Lucas entered, but they fluttered open at the sound of his footsteps. Lucas. He pulled a chair to her bedside and sat, his hands trembling as he reached for hers. I'm here. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You shouldn't be. It's not safe. He's watching. He's always watching. Who? Lucas leaned forward. Ava, you have to tell me. Who did this to you? But she was shaking her head, that same wild fear flickering in her eyes. I can't. If I tell you, he'll know. He always knows. He has eyes everywhere, Lucas. That's how he found out about Noah. That's how he knew when to what? She squeezed her eyes shut, and her whole body began to shake. The letters started when Noah was 3 months old. I didn't tell you because I thought it was just some crazy person, some stalker. I thought I could handle it myself. Lucas's grip on her hand tightened. What letters? They came to the house. 1 every week, no return address, no postmark. He was hand-delivering them. They said, she swallowed hard. They said if I didn't leave you, he would kill Noah. He would take our baby and make sure I never found the body. The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He slumped back in his chair, struggling to breathe. He sent pictures, Ava continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Pictures of Noah at the park, at daycare, in his crib, Lucas. He was watching our baby sleep and taking pictures through the window. Oh my God. I went to the police. They said without a clear threat, without evidence of the person's identity, there was nothing they could do. They suggested a restraining order. She laughed, a horrible, hollow sound. A restraining order against someone I couldn't even name. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out sharper than he intended. Ava flinched. I wanted to, she said. God, Lucas, I wanted to so badly, but he warned me. The letter said if I told anyone, especially you, he would know, and he did know. Every time I almost told you, another letter would arrive. Details about our conversations, things I'd said in private. He was listening. Somehow, he was always listening. Lucas thought of their old apartment, the open floor plan, the smart home devices he'd been so proud of installing. The house, he breathed. He bugged the house. I didn't know how. I didn't know where. All I knew was that he could hear everything, see everything, and if I made one wrong move, my baby would die. She was crying harder now, her words tumbling out in a rush of confession. He gave me a deadline, my 31st birthday, the day I was supposed to leave you. If I didn't, he said he would take Noah that night. He was so specific, Lucas. He told me exactly how he would do it. How he would climb through the nursery window, how he would cover Noah's face with a pillow, how I would wake up in the morning and find my baby cold and blue. So you left. It wasn't an accusation anymore. It was understanding. Ava nodded miserably. I staged the accident. I knew you would never stop looking for me if you thought I was alive somewhere. So I made it look like I drove off the bridge, cut myself to leave blood evidence, walked into the river far enough to lose my shoes, then climbed out downstream. And then? Then I disappeared. I spent the first few months moving from shelter to shelter, always looking over my shoulder. I hoped that if I was gone, he would leave you and Noah alone. That was the deal. I leave, and you both get to live. But it wasn't enough. No. Her voice cracked. It was never enough. He found me again about 6 months after I left. Ran me down with a car one night when I was walking to a homeless camp. Broke my arm, 2 ribs. Told me while I was lying on the ground that this was just a reminder, that he was still watching, still in control, and if I ever tried to come back... She couldn't finish. She didn't have to. Lucas stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the sky remained dark and heavy. I'm going to find him, he said quietly. Whoever did this. I'm going to find him, and I'm going to make him pay. Lucas, no, you don't understand. He's not just some random stalker. He's smart. He's patient. He's been planning this for years. I don't care. Lucas turned to face her, and for the first time since finding her on that street corner, his expression wasn't grief or shock or confusion. It was rage. Pure, cold, controlled rage. He took 3 years from us. He took you from me. He took you from Noah. Our son has been growing up without his mother because of this man, and I will tear apart this entire city to find him. Please, Ava whispered. Please don't. If something happened to you, if Noah lost his father too, Noah is not going to lose anyone. Lucas returned to her bedside, taking her face in his hands the way he had on that rain-soaked corner. I'm not the same man you left, Ava. I'm not the naive software engineer who thought the world was fundamentally good. I've built an empire in the last 3 years. I have money. I have power. I have resources you can't even imagine. I know, she said softly. I've seen. I've been watching from a distance. Every magazine cover, every news article. I kept a scrapbook even when I had nothing else. Then you know I can protect you. She searched his face, hope and fear warring in her eyes. And Noah? You'll protect Noah too? With my life. A sob escaped her. The first real, unguarded emotion Lucas had seen from her since she'd collapsed in his arms. She pressed her face into his shoulder, her thin fingers clutching his shirt, and she cried the way he imagined she'd been wanting to cry for 3 long years. I missed you, she gasped between sobs. I missed you every single day, every night, every time I saw a family walking by, every time I heard a child laugh. I would think of Noah taking his first steps without me, saying his first words without me, having birthdays I wasn't there for. Lucas held her, his own tears falling into her matted hair. I showed him pictures every night. I told him stories about you. He knows who you are, Ava. He knows his mother loved him more than anything in the world. Loves, she corrected weakly. Loves him. Present tense. Present tense, Lucas agreed. And you're going to tell him yourself, as soon as you're strong enough. She pulled back, wiping her eyes with shaking hands. What if he doesn't remember me? What if he's scared of me? I look like... She gestured at herself, at the hollowed-out shell she'd become. I look like a monster. You look like a survivor, Lucas said firmly. And when Noah is ready, when you're ready, he's going to see his incredibly brave mother who went through hell to keep him safe. Ava stared at him for a long moment. How can you not hate me? Hate you? I left you. I made you think I was dead. I let you grieve for 3 years. Because someone threatened to kill our son. Because you sacrificed everything. Your life, your family, your own safety, to protect the people you loved. Lucas shook his head. How could I hate you for that? Ava, you did what any parent would do, what I would have done. I should have told you. We should have faced it together. Maybe. Or maybe he would have killed Noah anyway. We'll never know. Lucas took her hands again, pressing them between his own. What I do know is that you're here now, you're alive, and I'm not letting you go again. A ghost of a smile flickered across Ava's face, the first hint of the woman he remembered buried beneath all that trauma and pain. You always were stubborn. It's one of my many charms. She laughed, a wet, broken sound, but a laugh nonetheless. And for a moment, sitting there in that dim hospital room with the rain tapping against the window, Lucas could almost believe that everything would be okay. Almost. The next few days passed in a blur of hospital visits, phone calls, and sleepless nights. Lucas hired a private security firm to guard Ava's room around the clock. He brought in a renowned psychiatrist specializing in trauma, who spent hours with Ava helping her process the nightmare she'd survived. He consulted with his lawyers about legal options, protective orders, anything that might provide an additional layer of security. And he hired Marcus Webb. Marcus was the best private investigator in the Pacific Northwest, a former FBI profiler who had left the bureau after solving a series of high-profile kidnapping cases. He was expensive, discreet, and had a reputation for finding people who didn't want to be found. "Tell me everything," Marcus said, settling into a chair across from Lucas in his home office. He was a solid man in his 50s, with gray hair cut military short and eyes that seemed to see through every wall Lucas had ever built. Lucas told him everything. The letters Ava had received, the surveillance photos of Noah, the staged accident, the years of hiding, the assault, the slow destruction of a woman who had once been so vibrant. Marcus listened without interrupting, making occasional notes on a small pad. "And she has no idea who might be behind this?" "No." Lucas rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept more than a few hours in days. She said the letters were typed, no handwriting to analyze. The photos were printed on standard paper, nothing traceable. The person who ran her down was wearing a mask. "What about the bugs in your old apartment? Did she ever find them?" "She didn't. But I sold that place 2 years ago when I bought the mansion. If there were listening devices, they would have been found during the renovation." Marcus nodded slowly. "Here's what strikes me about this case, Mr. Grant. Stalkers of this sophistication, the bugs, the long-term planning, the patience, they're rare. Most stalkers act on impulse. They escalate quickly. The ones who play the long game." He paused. "They're usually closer than you think." "What do you mean?" "I mean, this person knew your routine, your schedule, the layout of your home. They knew when your wife was alone, when she was vulnerable. They knew how to deliver letters without being seen, how to take photos without being noticed. That level of access usually comes from proximity." Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. "You're saying someone we knew?" "I'm saying it's possible. Think carefully. Who had regular access to your home 3 years ago? Housekeepers, nannies, maintenance workers, delivery people?" "We had a cleaning service that came twice a week, a gardener, but they were all vetted." "Friends? Family?" Lucas thought. His parents were dead. Ava's father had passed before they met, and her mother lived in Florida with dementia that made her unable to remember her own name. Neither of them had siblings. "We weren't particularly social," he admitted. "I was working insane hours trying to build the company. Ava was adjusting to motherhood. Our closest friends were—" He trailed off. "Were who?" "Work colleagues mostly, a few people from college." Lucas frowned. "And Mara, of course." "Mara?" "Mara Chen, my executive assistant. She and Ava were actually friends before she started working for me." Marcus wrote the name down. "How did they know each other?" "College. They were roommates freshman year. When I was looking for an assistant and Mara had just finished her MBA, Ava suggested I hire her." "And she still works for you?" "Yes. She's been incredible, honestly. When Ava disappeared, Mara basically held my life together. She helped with the funeral arrangements, the police interviews. She organized meal trains, found me a therapist, made sure I remembered to eat." Lucas shook his head. "I don't know what I would have done without her." Something flickered in Marcus's expression, something Lucas couldn't quite read. "I'd like to interview her." "Mara? She's not a suspect. She's family." "Everyone is a suspect until they're not, Mr. Grant. That's how this works. If she's truly innocent, my interview will clear her and we can move on." Lucas hesitated. The idea of investigating Mara felt like a betrayal. She had been his rock during the darkest period of his life. She had held his hand at Ava's memorial service, her tears as real as his own. She had helped him navigate single fatherhood, offered to babysit Noah when he had to travel, remembered every birthday and milestone. But Marcus was the expert, and Lucas had promised Ava he would find the person responsible. "Fine," he said, "but I'll need to be there." "Actually, you won't. Subjects behave differently when someone they know is present. I need her unfiltered." Lucas didn't like it, but he nodded anyway. That night, Lucas sat in Noah's room, watching his son sleep. The boy looked so much like Ava, the same dark hair, the same curve to his cheeks, but he had Lucas's stubborn chin and his grandmother's blue eyes. He was perfect, a miracle, the one good thing that had come from the worst 3 years of Lucas's life. "Your mama's coming home," Lucas whispered. "Soon, buddy, real soon." Noah stirred in his sleep, one small hand curling around his stuffed dinosaur. He'd been obsessed with dinosaurs lately, hence the promised trip to the science center that had been derailed by the storm, by fate. Lucas leaned back in the rocking chair that Ava had picked out during her pregnancy, back when their biggest worry was which color to paint the nursery. How naive they had been. How blissfully, ignorantly happy. He thought about what Marcus had said. Someone close to them. Someone with access. He thought about Mara, who had known every detail of their lives, who had been in their home countless times before Ava disappeared, who had comforted him through the worst pain he'd ever known. No, he was being paranoid. Mara had been nothing but loyal. She had no motive, no reason to... His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I see you found her." Lucas stared at the message, his heart suddenly pounding. "You shouldn't have done that." Another buzz. "Now I have to clean up your mess." And then a photo appeared, a photo that made Lucas's blood turn to ice. It was Noah's window, taken from outside in the dark, and pressed against the glass, fogging it with breath, was a single pale hand. Lucas sprinted for the window, yanking back the curtains. Nothing. No one. Just the empty yard, shadows swaying in the breeze. But when he looked down, there on the windowsill was a single white envelope. No postmark, no address, just his name, typed in neat black letters. Lucas. He didn't open it, not right away. First he called Marcus. Then he called his security team. Then he called the police, though he knew from Ava's experience how little they would be able to do. Then, hands shaking, he opened the envelope. A single sheet of paper. Typed. Just like the letters Ava had described. "Dear Lucas, you were supposed to move on. You were supposed to forget her. You were supposed to be mine. But you couldn't let go, could you? You had to keep her picture on your desk. You had to tell Noah stories about her. You had to keep that ridiculous hope alive. And now she's back, and you think you've won. You haven't. She will never have you. She will never have Noah. She broke the rules, and rules have consequences. This is your only warning. Send her away, tonight, forever, or I will send you both to join her in the grave. With all my love, your future." Lucas read the letter 3 times. His hands had stopped shaking by the end. In their place was something colder, harder. Your future. Someone who thought they deserved him. Someone who had been waiting in the wings. Someone who believed that by removing Ava from the picture, they could take her place. Marcus was right. The stalker was close. Closer than Lucas had ever imagined, and he was going to find them. The letter sat on Lucas's desk like a coiled snake. Its words burned into his memory long after the police had photographed it, bagged it, and taken it away for analysis he already knew would yield nothing. Your future. Those 2 words haunted him through the long night that followed. He didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Instead, he paced the halls of his mansion like a ghost, checking locks, peering through windows, listening for sounds that didn't belong. The security team he'd hired patrolled the perimeter in shifts, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, but Lucas found no comfort in their presence. Someone had been at Noah's window. Someone had been watching his son sleep, close enough to leave a letter, close enough to press their hand against the glass. The thought made him physically ill. By dawn, he had made a decision. He found Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast despite the early hour. The elderly housekeeper had been with him since he'd bought the mansion, a steady presence in a life that had been anything but steady. "I need you to pack bags for Noah," Lucas said without preamble. "Enough for 2 weeks. We're leaving today." Mrs. Chen looked up from the pancake batter she was mixing, her weathered face creased with concern. "Leaving? But Mr. Grant, what about your meetings? The Henderson deal?" "Cancel everything. I'll work remotely." He pulled out his phone, already composing a message to Marcus. "And I need you to call Noah's daycare. Tell them he won't be coming in for a while." "Is everything all right?" Lucas paused, his fingers hovering over the screen. How much could he tell her? How much should he tell anyone? "No," he admitted quietly. "Everything is very far from all right, but I'm going to fix it." 2 hours later, Lucas carried a still sleepy Noah to his car, while Mrs. Chen loaded suitcases into the trunk. The sun had barely risen, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed almost obscene given the darkness of the previous night. "Daddy, where are we going?" Noah mumbled, his arms wrapped around his stuffed dinosaur. "On an adventure, buddy. Remember how I told you about the cabin? The one in the mountains?" Noah's eyes widened with excitement despite his drowsiness. "With the lake? Where the fishies live? That's the one. We're going to stay there for a while. You and me and—" Lucas hesitated. "And someone very special." The drive to Swedish Medical Center took 20 minutes in the light morning traffic. Lucas had called ahead, and by the time he arrived, Ava was already sitting up in her hospital bed, looking more alert than she had since he'd found her. The IV had been removed, and someone had helped her wash her hair, which now hung in damp waves around her thin face. She looked up when he entered, and her eyes went immediately to the small figure in his arms. Noah had fallen asleep again during the drive, his head resting on Lucas's shoulder. But some instinct made him stir now, his blue eyes blinking open, focusing on the woman in the hospital bed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ava's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks as she pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "Hi, my sweet boy." Noah stared at her with the unguarded curiosity of a 3-year-old. Lucas could see him processing, comparing this thin, sad woman to the photographs he'd been shown every night, to the stories he'd been told since before he could understand words. "Mama?" The word came out small, uncertain. Ava nodded, unable to speak through her tears. And then Noah did something that shattered Lucas's heart into a million pieces. He reached out his small arms toward the mother he barely remembered, the mother who had haunted his bedtime stories for 3 years, and he said the only thing that mattered. "Don't cry, Mama. Daddy says crying means you're sad. I don't want you to be sad." Lucas placed his son gently on the edge of the hospital bed, and Ava gathered him into her arms with a desperation that spoke of 1,000 lonely nights, 1,000 imagined embraces, 1,000 moments she had thought she would never have. "I'm not sad, baby," she managed through her tears. "I'm happy. I'm so, so happy." Noah patted her cheek with his small hand, clearly confused by this contradiction. "Happy crying?" "The happiest crying in the whole world." Lucas stood back, watching his broken family begin to piece itself back together, and for just a moment, he let himself believe that everything would be okay, that love would be enough to heal the wounds of the past 3 years, that whoever had written that letter, whoever had pressed their hand against Noah's window, would simply fade away in the face of this reunion. He knew better, of course. He knew the danger was far from over. But for now, for this one perfect moment, he let himself hope. The cabin was nestled in the Cascade Mountains, 2 hours east of Seattle on a private road that wound through dense forests of Douglas fir and western red cedar. Lucas had bought it 3 years ago, shortly after Ava's disappearance, as a retreat from the memories that haunted every corner of the city. He'd only used it a handful of times since, unable to enjoy its peace while his heart remained in pieces. Now, as his Mercedes climbed the winding driveway, he saw it with new eyes. The log walls, the wraparound porch, the pristine lake visible through the trees. It wasn't just a retreat anymore. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could keep his family safe while Marcus Webb worked to uncover the truth. Ava had been released from the hospital that morning, against medical advice but with Lucas's promise to have a private nurse check on her daily. She sat in the passenger seat now, her eyes fixed on the passing scenery with an expression of wonder that made Lucas's chest ache. "I forgot what trees looked like," she said softly. "Real trees, I mean, not the scraggly ones in vacant lots. There's a hiking trail that goes all the way around the lake. When you're stronger, we can take Noah." She turned to look at him, and in her eyes he saw a mixture of gratitude and something else, something that looked almost like fear. "Lucas, about last night, the letter. You didn't tell me what it said." He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. He'd been hoping to avoid this conversation until they were settled, until he could present a plan along with the problem. But Ava had always been able to read him too well. It was a threat, similar to the ones you received. "Addressed to you?" "Yes." "And it mentioned me?" Lucas didn't answer, which was answer enough. Ava turned back to the window, but not before he caught the way her shoulders hunched, the way her hands curled into fists in her lap. "I shouldn't have come back," she whispered. "I should have stayed away. I'm putting you both in danger just by being here." "No." Lucas reached over and took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "You're exactly where you belong. We're going to find whoever did this, Ava. We're going to stop them." "How?" "The police couldn't help before. What makes you think anything will be different now?" "Because now I have resources and motivation." He squeezed her hand. "And because I hired the best private investigator in the state. His name is Marcus Webb, former FBI. He's already started looking into your case." For a moment, hope flickered in Ava's eyes. Then it faded, replaced by the wary resignation of someone who had learned not to expect happy endings. "I've been running for 3 years," she said quietly. "I've changed cities, changed names, changed everything about myself, and he always found me. Every single time. It's like he has some kind of sixth sense." "Or an inside source." Ava frowned. "What do you mean?" Lucas hesitated. He hadn't wanted to share Marcus's theory yet, not until there was more evidence, but Ava deserved to know. She had spent 3 years in the dark, and he had promised himself he would never keep anything from her again. "Marcus thinks the stalker might be someone we know, someone who had access to our lives, our routine, someone close." The color drained from Ava's face. "No, that's not possible. Our friends wouldn't. I mean, who would even. I don't know. But Marcus is looking into everyone. Friends, colleagues, anyone who was in our orbit before you disappeared." "Everyone?" "Lucas, that's dozens of people." "I know." They drove in silence for a while, the only sound Noah's soft breathing from his car seat in the back. He had fallen asleep again, his dinosaur tucked under his chin, blissfully unaware of the danger that swirled around his small life. Finally, Ava spoke again. "There's something I haven't told you. About the person who's been stalking me." Lucas felt his pulse quicken. "What?" "The letters I got, they weren't just threats, they were love letters in a twisted way. The person who wrote them, they talked about wanting to take care of me, about how I deserved better than you." She swallowed hard. "They said I was wasting myself on someone who didn't appreciate me, that they would show me what real love looked like." "That's insane." "I know, but it was consistent. Every letter, the same theme. They were obsessed with me, Lucas. Not you, me." Lucas processed this information, his mind racing. "But then why did they force you to leave? If they wanted you, because they couldn't have me while I was with you. They wanted me alone, vulnerable, dependent. The threats against Noah were just leverage, a way to control me." Ava's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And for 3 years it worked. Did they ever, approach you? Try to make contact directly?" "No, that's what scared me the most. They stayed in the shadows, left letters, watched from a distance, ran me down with a car but never showed their face. It was like they were waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" Ava turned to him, and in her eyes he saw a terror that went deeper than anything she had shown him before. "For me to break completely. For me to hit rock bottom with no one to turn to. And then, I think, they would have come to rescue me, to be my savior." She laughed bitterly. "But I didn't break. I kept fighting, kept hiding, kept refusing to give up hope that someday I might see you and Noah again. And that, I think, made them angry." Lucas thought about the letter he had received, the possessive tone, the rage beneath the surface. She will never have you. She will never have Noah. The letter I got, he said slowly, it was different from what you're describing. It wasn't addressed to you, it was addressed to me, and it talked about how I was supposed to be theirs. Ava's brow furrowed. Theirs? But that doesn't match. Unless there were two of them. One obsessed with you, one obsessed with me. Two stalkers? Working together? Or one stalker with a split obsession? Lucas shook his head. I don't know, but Marcus will figure it out. That's what I'm paying him for. They arrived at the cabin just as the afternoon sun began to filter through the trees, casting long shadows across the lake. Lucas carried the sleeping Noah inside while Ava walked slowly up the porch steps, her hand trailing along the wooden railing as if to convince herself this was real. The interior was rustic but comfortable, with high ceilings, a stone fireplace, and wide windows that overlooked the water. Lucas had hired a caretaker to maintain the property, and the place was clean and well-stocked, ready for exactly this kind of emergency retreat. It's beautiful, Ava breathed. I can't believe you never mentioned it. I bought it after you were gone. I needed somewhere to escape, somewhere that didn't have memories of you around every corner. He laid Noah on the couch, covering him with a blanket. Turns out, you can't really escape memories. They follow you wherever you go. Ava moved to the window, looking out at the lake where a family of ducks was gliding across the still surface. I have so many memories of you and Noah, but they're all from photographs, from imagination. I missed his first steps, his first words, his first birthday, second birthday, third, 3 years of first that I'll never get back. You'll get all the next, Lucas said, coming to stand beside her. His first day of school, his first bike ride, his first loose tooth, all of it. I promise. She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her the way he used to when they first fell in love. She was thinner now, more fragile, but she still fit against him like she had been designed to be there. I don't deserve you, she murmured against his chest. You're right. You deserve better. But you're stuck with me anyway. A small laugh escaped her, the first genuine laugh he'd heard since finding her on that street corner. And for a moment, surrounded by the peace of the mountains, with their son sleeping safely nearby, Lucas allowed himself to believe that healing was possible. That moment was shattered by the sound of his phone buzzing. He pulled it from his pocket, expecting a message from Marcus or Mrs. Chen. Instead, the screen displayed an unknown number, the same one that had sent the threatening text the night before. Did you think running would help? Lucas's blood ran cold. I know where you are. I always know. Another buzz. Send her away, or I will paint that beautiful lake red with her blood. Ava must have sensed the change in him because she pulled back, looking up at his face with growing alarm. Lucas? What is it? He showed her the phone. He watched the color drain from her face, watched her hands begin to tremble, watched 3 years of terror come flooding back into her eyes. No, she whispered. No, no, no. How? How did they find us so fast? Lucas didn't have an answer. He had told no one about the cabin except Mrs. Chen and the security team, and even they didn't know the exact location, only that he was leaving the city for a while. Someone was tracking him, his phone, his car, something, but he had switched phones that morning, and he had specifically chosen the Mercedes because it was the one vehicle he owned that wasn't connected to any GPS tracking service. So how? His mind raced through possibilities, each more paranoid than the last. A tracking device planted on his car, a mole in his security team, a tap on his home network that was monitoring all his communications, or someone who had been close enough to overhear his plans, someone he had spoken to directly about the cabin, about the retreat, about keeping his family safe. Mrs. Chen, the security team leader. Mara. The name surfaced unbidden, and Lucas shoved it away. Not Mara. Anyone but Mara. She had been with him through everything. She had helped him survive the worst years of his life. She had cried at Ava's memorial, for God's sake. But even as he rejected the thought, another part of his mind was cataloging details he had overlooked before. How Mara always seemed to know where he was. how she anticipated his needs before he voiced them, how she had been the one to suggest this particular cabin when he was looking for a retreat 3 years ago, right after Ava disappeared. I know where you are. I always know. Lucas, Ava's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. We have to leave. Have to. Right now. We have to take Noah and go where? He looked at her helplessly. If they can find us here, they can find us anywhere. Running isn't the answer. Then what is? Before he could respond, his phone buzzed again, but this time it was a different number, Marcus Webb. Lucas, we need to talk. Did you find something? I found a lot of somethings, but I need you to come back to Seattle, tonight, if possible. That's not going to work. We're at the cabin. I'm not bringing my family back to the city until the threat is neutralized. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The cabin in the Cascades? The one you bought 3 years ago? Yes. Why? Another pause, longer this time. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had taken on an edge that Lucas didn't like. Lucas, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Do you remember who helped you find that property? It was... Lucas trailed off, a cold sweat breaking out across his skin. It was Mara. She handled the search, the paperwork. She said she knew a realtor who specialized in mountain properties. And did you check with that realtor? Verify the purchase? Of course I did. The deed is in my name. The title is clear. The deed is in your name, Marcus agreed. But there's something you should know about the realtor. His name is Thomas Chen. No relation to your housekeeper, but an interesting coincidence nonetheless. Get to the point, Marcus. Thomas Chen doesn't exist. The realty company he supposedly works for is a shell corporation registered to a P.O. box in Nevada, and when I tried to trace the ownership of that shell company, guess what name came up? Lucas felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. Whose name? Mara Chen. The words hung in the air, impossible and undeniable. That's not possible. Mara wouldn't... She couldn't... There's more. I've been digging into her background like I said I would. Her college records check out, but there's a gap. 2 years between her MBA and when she started working for you. She claimed she was traveling, finding herself. But I found hospital records under a different name. A psychiatric facility in Arizona. She was committed for obsessive attachment disorder and delusional thinking. Lucas couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Lucas, I don't say this lightly. Based on everything I've found, Mara Chen has been stalking you for at least 5 years. And I believe she's been stalking your wife even longer. Stalking us both? But that doesn't make sense. The letters Ava got talked about wanting her, not me. Those letters were designed to get Ava out of the picture, to isolate you. Think about it, Lucas. Who benefited most from your wife's disappearance? Who was right there to pick up the pieces? Who became indispensable to you the moment Ava was gone? The answer was obvious. Horrifyingly obvious. Mara. I need you to get out of that cabin, Marcus continued. If she set up the purchase, she knows the property. She might have surveillance equipment installed, hidden cameras, listening devices. You're not safe there. Lucas looked around the cabin with new eyes. The cozy interior suddenly seemed sinister, every shadow hiding potential threats. He thought about all the times he had come here seeking peace, all the nights he had slept in that bedroom, all the conversations he had had with no idea anyone might be listening. I'll take care of it, he said, his voice flat. But Marcus, I need you to do something for me. Name it. Find out everything you can about Mara Chen. Every secret, every lie, every skeleton in her closet. I want to know who she really is. Already on it. But Lucas, be careful. People like her, when they feel their fantasies slipping away, they become dangerous, unpredictable. She's not going to let you go without a fight. Lucas ended the call and stood in silence for a long moment, processing what he had just learned. Mara, his trusted assistant, his rock, the woman who had held his hand at his wife's memorial service, the woman who had orchestrated that memorial service, who had made sure there was a body to bury, even though Ava had never actually died. Lucas? Ava's voice was thin with fear. What did he say? Who was that? Lucas turned to face her, and in his eyes she must have seen something that frightened her, because she took a step backward, her hand going to her throat. It's Mara, he said. It's been Mara all along. The color that had slowly been returning to Ava's cheeks drained away in an instant. Mara? Your assistant Mara? But she's my friend. We were roommates. She introduced us, for God's sake. That's the thing about obsession, Lucas said quietly. It's patient. It plays the long game. He told her everything Marcus had revealed. The fake realty company. The psychiatric commitment. The careful, methodical way Mara had inserted herself into their lives, into their home, into the space left by Ava's forced disappearance. By the end, Ava was sitting on the couch beside their sleeping son, her arms wrapped around herself as if she were physically holding herself together. She comforted me, Ava whispered. After the first letter arrived, I called her crying, scared, and she told me everything would be okay. She told me not to worry, that people like that were all talk. A bitter laugh escaped her. She was talking about herself. She was reassuring me about her own threats. We have to go, Lucas said. Marcus thinks the cabin might be bugged. We can't stay here. Where can we go? If she can track your car, your phone, we'll rent a car, pay cash, go somewhere she wouldn't think to look. There is no such place. Ava's voice was hollow. Don't you see, Lucas? She's been planning this for years. She knows everything about us, our habits, our friends, our favorite places. There's nowhere we can hide that she won't find. Then we don't hide. Lucas knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in his. We fight. We gather evidence. We go to the police with everything Marcus has found, and we put her away for good. The police couldn't help before. Before you were working alone, before you were running scared. This time is different. He squeezed her hands. This time, we're together. And I'm not going to let anything happen to you or Noah. I swear it on my life. Ava looked at him, searched his face for something. Whatever she found there seemed to steady her because she nodded slowly. Okay. What do we do first? First, we wake up Noah and get out of here. Then we call Marcus back and coordinate our next move. Lucas stood, reaching for his phone. And then we find out exactly what Mara Chen has been up to for the last 5 years. They left the cabin as the sun was setting, painting the lake in shades of orange and red that looked too much like blood for Lucas's comfort. Noah, confused by the sudden change in plans but trusting his father completely, clutched his dinosaur and asked when they would come back to see the fishies. Soon, buddy, Lucas lied. Real soon. He drove to a small town an hour south where they rented a sedan from a lot that still did business in cash. The owner, an elderly man who looked like he hadn't updated his computer system since 1995, didn't ask questions. He just counted the bills, handed over the keys, and went back to watching his small television. They checked into a motel under a false name, paying for 3 nights in advance. The room was cramped and musty, with water stains on the ceiling and a television that only picked up local channels. It was nothing like the luxury Lucas had become accustomed to, nothing like the life he had built over the past 3 years. But it was safe, or at least safer than the cabin that Mara had chosen for him. While Noah played on the bed with the few toys they had managed to grab, Lucas called Marcus again. I'm sending you everything I've found, the investigator said. Bank records, travel records, phone records going back 5 years. It paints a pretty clear picture. How clear? Clear enough to make an arrest, if the police are willing to listen. The problem is that most of what I've found is circumstantial. We can prove she set up the fake realty company, prove she was committed to a psychiatric facility, prove she had motive, but we can't prove she actually sent those letters or ran down your wife. What about the texts I received? They came from an unknown number, but surely that can be traced. I'm working on it. But if she's as careful as I think she is, the phone will be a burner, untraceable. Lucas closed his eyes, frustration building in his chest. So what do we do? We need her to make a mistake, to slip up, to do something that definitively connects her to the crimes. Marcus paused. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Try me. We set a trap. Make her think she's won, that you've done what she wanted and sent Ava away. Then we wait for her to make her move. Use my wife as bait? You're right. I don't like it. It's the best way to catch her in the act, to get evidence that will stand up in court. Lucas looked at Ava, who was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching him with worried eyes. She had heard enough of the conversation to understand what Marcus was proposing. "I'll do it," she said quietly. "No, absolutely not." "Lucas, think about it. As long as she's out there, we're never going to be safe. Noah is never going to be safe. If this is the only way to stop her, there has to be another way." "Is there?" Ava stood and crossed to him, placing her hand on his cheek. "I spent 3 years running, hiding, looking over my shoulder. I can't do that anymore. I can't live like that, and I won't make Noah live like that. If setting a trap is what it takes to end this, then I'm willing." Lucas wanted to argue, wanted to protect her the way he had failed to protect her 3 years ago. But he saw the determination in her eyes, the steel beneath the fragility, and he knew that arguing would be pointless. "Fine," he said at last, "but we do it my way, with maximum security. And the second things go sideways, we pull out." "Agreed." Lucas turned back to the phone. "Marcus, tell me what you need." The plan came together over the next 2 days. Lucas would return to Seattle alone, making a show of sending Ava away. He would resume his normal routine, go back to work, act as though nothing had changed. Mara would believe she had won, that her threats had finally worked. And then they would wait for her to slip up. In the meantime, Marcus continued his investigation, digging deeper into Mara's past. What he found was disturbing. A pattern of obsessive relationships stretching back to her teenage years. An ex-boyfriend who had filed a restraining order, a former colleague who had quit her job after Mara became fixated on her, and most damning of all, a connection to Ava that predated their college roommate days. They went to the same high school, Marcus explained over the phone. Different grades, but the same school. Ava probably doesn't remember her, but I found yearbook photos. Mara was in the background of several pictures featuring Ava, always watching, always in the shadows. So she's been obsessed with Ava since high school? It looks that way. And when Ava introduced her to you, the obsession transferred, or maybe expanded. I've seen cases like this before. People with this type of disorder, they don't just want the person they're fixated on. They want their life, their relationships, everything they have. Lucas thought about Mara's efficiency, her anticipation of his needs, the way she had seamlessly filled the gaps left by Ava's absence. He had thought she was just good at her job. Now he realized she had been rehearsing for a role, studying for a part she had always intended to play. The morning of his return to Seattle, Lucas said goodbye to Ava and Noah in the cramped motel room. Noah, who had been told they were on a surprise vacation, didn't understand why Daddy was leaving. He cried, clutching Lucas's leg, begging to come too. "I'll be back soon," Lucas promised, kneeling to meet his son's eyes. "I just have to take care of some grown-up stuff. You stay here with Mama and be a good boy, okay? Promise you'll come back?" "I promise. Cross my heart." Noah made him actually cross his heart, then demanded a pinky swear for good measure. Only then did he let go, retreating to Ava's side with his lower lip still trembling. Lucas turned to Ava, who stood with her arms wrapped around herself, looking small and scared despite her brave words. "Be careful," she whispered. "Please." "I will." He pulled her into an embrace, breathing in the scent of her hair. She was using the motel's cheap shampoo, nothing like the expensive products she used to favor, but underneath it all she still smelled like home. "I love you. I never stopped." "I know." She pulled back, touching his face. "I love you too. Now go. The sooner you catch her, the sooner we can be a family again." Lucas drove the rented sedan back to Seattle, his mind churning with strategies and contingencies. Marcus had arranged for a team of undercover operatives to monitor Mara's movements. Security cameras had been discreetly installed at Lucas's office and home. Phone taps were in place, email monitoring activated. The trap was set. Now he just had to spring it. He arrived at his mansion in the late afternoon, parking the rental car in the garage and entering through the kitchen. The house was quiet, Mrs. Chen having been given a paid vacation for her own safety. Lucas moved through the familiar rooms, acutely aware of how empty they felt without Noah's laughter or Ava's presence. His phone buzzed. A text from Mara. "Welcome back. I heard about your trip. Everything okay?" Lucas stared at the message, his skin crawling. How did she know he was back? Was she watching the house? Had she somehow tracked him despite all his precautions? He typed a carefully neutral response. "Fine." Just needed some time away. I'll be in the office tomorrow. Her reply came instantly. Of course. Take all the time you need. I've been handling things here. The Henderson deal is back on track. Thanks. You're a lifesaver. Always. That's what I'm here for. Lucas set down the phone, fighting the urge to throw it across the room. Every word from her now seemed loaded with double meaning. Every kindness, a manipulation. Every smile, a mask hiding something monstrous. Tomorrow, he would see her face to face. Tomorrow, he would pretend that nothing had changed, that he still trusted her completely. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. He spent the evening reviewing the files Marcus had sent, memorizing every detail of Mara's hidden life. The psychiatric reports were particularly chilling. Doctors had diagnosed her with erotomania, a delusional disorder in which a person believes another is in love with them, despite evidence to the contrary. They had also noted a dangerous lack of empathy and a willingness to engage in harmful behaviors to achieve her goals. Patient displays classic predatory characteristics, one report read. She is intelligent, manipulative, and utterly convinced of her own righteousness. She shows no remorse for the harm she has caused and is likely to escalate if her delusions are challenged. Lucas read that line 3 times, a cold knot forming in his stomach. Likely to escalate. What did escalation look like for someone like Mara? She had already driven Ava to the brink of death, already terrorized her for 3 years, already wormed her way into Lucas's life so thoroughly that he had trusted her with his deepest secrets. What more was she capable of? He found out the next morning. Lucas arrived at Grant Technologies at 8 a.m., just as he had every workday for the past 3 years. The building, a sleek glass tower in downtown Seattle, hummed with the usual energy of a tech company firing on all cylinders. Employees nodded as he passed, their expressions respectful but not surprised. As far as they knew, their CEO had simply taken a few personal days. Nothing unusual. Mara was waiting at her desk outside his office, her smile bright and warm and utterly false. "Good morning. You look rested." "I feel better," Lucas lied smoothly. "Thanks for holding down the fort." "Of course, I brought you your usual." She handed him a coffee cup. Double espresso, splash of oat milk. Lucas took the cup, careful not to let his expression change. How many coffees had she brought him over the years? How many had he drunk without question, trusting her completely? "You always know what I need," he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "That's my job." Mara's smile widened. "Oh, before I forget, the Henderson meeting has been rescheduled for Thursday, and you have a call with the Tokyo office at 3. Perfect. I'll be in my office. Hold my calls for the first hour. I need to catch up on emails." "Of course." Lucas entered his office and closed the door behind him. Only then did he let out the breath he'd been holding. He set the coffee on his desk without drinking it. Later, he would have it tested. If Mara was truly as dangerous as Marcus believed, there was no telling what she might have added to it. For the rest of the morning, Lucas played his part. He took meetings, reviewed contracts, made decisions about matters that suddenly seemed utterly insignificant compared to the drama unfolding in his personal life. Through it all, Mara was a constant presence, bringing him water, reminding him of appointments, asking after his well-being with a concern that now seemed sickening in its intensity. Around noon, she knocked on his office door. "Lunch? I ordered from that Thai place you like." "Sure. Come in." She entered with 2 takeout containers, settling into the chair across from his desk with an ease that spoke of countless similar meals. This was their routine, their comfortable pattern. 2 colleagues enjoying lunch together, 2 friends sharing food and conversation. Lucas made himself eat, made himself smile, made himself ask about her weekend and nod at her answers. All the while, his skin crawled with the awareness of who she really was, what she had really done. "Can I ask you something?" Mara said suddenly. "Of course." "Where did you go these past few days? You seemed different when you left, agitated." Lucas kept his expression neutral. "Just stress. The Henderson deal has been weighing on me. I needed some time to clear my head." Mara tilted her head, studying him. "And that's all? Just work stress? What else would there be?" For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Something cold and calculating that didn't match her pleasant expression. "Nothing," she said lightly. "I just worry about you, that's all. You've been through so much, losing Ava, raising Noah alone. I hate seeing you carry all that weight. At the mention of Ava's name, Lucas felt his composure slip, just for a second. Just enough for Mara's eyes to narrow slightly. Have you been thinking about her again? She asked softly. About Ava? I always think about her. She was my wife. Was. Past tense. Mara leaned forward, her expression earnest. Lucas, it's been 3 years. You're allowed to move on. You're allowed to be happy. I know. Do you? Because sometimes I watch you, and I see this wall. Like you're not really here. Like part of you is still waiting for her to come back. Lucas felt sweat prick at the back of his neck. Was she testing him? Had she somehow found out about the cabin, about the reunion? She's not coming back, he said carefully. I've accepted that. Have you? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Lucas held her gaze, refusing to look away, refusing to show the fear that was building in his chest. Finally, Mara smiled and leaned back. Good. Because you deserve to be happy, Lucas. You deserve someone who can actually be there for you. Someone who won't leave. Someone like me. The words weren't spoken, but they didn't need to be. They hung in the air like a threat, or a promise. Lucas's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. A text from Marcus. Surveillance picked up something. Call me ASAP. I need to take this, Lucas said, standing. Thanks for lunch. Of course, I'll clear up. He waited until she had gathered the takeout containers and left before calling Marcus. What did you find? Your assistant is on the move. She left the building about 10 minutes ago, told the front desk she was getting more coffee. But our team followed her to a storage unit in Sodo. A storage unit? Registered under the same fake name she used for the realty company. She was inside for about 15 minutes, then came out with a duffel bag. Lucas felt his pulse quicken. Did you get photos? Better. One of my guys got close enough to see inside before she locked up. You're not going to believe what's in there. Try me. Letters, thousands of them, stacked floor to ceiling in boxes, all addressed to either you or Ava, dated going back 7 years. And that's not all. There were photos. Hundreds of photos of both of you. At your office, your home, restaurants, the park. Everywhere. Lucas closed his eyes, nausea rolling through him. There's more, Marcus continued. In one corner, there was what looked like a shrine. Candles, photos of you, some of your personal effects that have gone missing over the years. A watch you thought you'd lost. A tie. A coffee mug with your company logo. She's insane. That's the clinical assessment, yes. But here's the thing, Lucas. This gives us enough for a warrant. I've already reached out to a detective I know. If you're willing to press charges, we can have her in custody by tonight. Tonight. The nightmare could be over tonight. But even as relief washed over him, Lucas felt a nagging doubt. Something about this was too easy. Mara had been so careful for so long. Why would she suddenly get sloppy? What about the duffel bag? He asked. What was in it? Unknown. She took it with her. Our guy couldn't get close enough without being spotted. And where is she now? Back in your building. Returned about 5 minutes ago. Lucas looked at his office door, thinking about the woman sitting on the other side. The woman who had been plotting his life for 7 years. The woman who had stolen his wife, terrorized his family, and smiled while doing it. Get the warrant, he said. I want this over. Done. Sit tight. I'll call you when it's ready. Lucas ended the call and sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. In a few hours, Mara would be arrested. The threat would be neutralized. He could bring Ava and Noah home, and they could start rebuilding their lives. So why did he feel like something was very, very wrong? The answer came at 3:47 p.m. in the form of a text from an unknown number. Nice try. But if you think I'm going down without a fight, you don't know me at all. Another buzz. Check your coffee. Lucas looked at the cup still sitting on his desk, untouched. His blood ran cold. Another buzz. Too late. You've already drunk it. The one I brought you at 9 a.m. You didn't think I'd be so obvious, did you? His mind raced back to that morning. The first coffee. He had drunk that one without thinking, before his guard was fully up. Sweet dreams, Lucas. When you wake up, everything will be different. The phone slipped from his suddenly numb fingers. The room began to spin. He reached for his desk, trying to steady himself, but his legs wouldn't hold him. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Mara's face, appearing in his doorway with that terrible, triumphant smile. "I told you," she whispered. "You belong to me." And then there was nothing. Lucas woke to darkness and the smell of antiseptic. His head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache that seemed to pulse behind his eyes with every heartbeat. He tried to move, to lift his hand to his face, but his arms wouldn't respond. Something was holding them down, something cold and metallic that bit into his wrists when he struggled. Handcuffs. He was handcuffed to something. Panic surged through him, burning away the fog of whatever drug Mara had slipped into his coffee. He forced his eyes open, blinking against the harsh fluorescent light that seemed to stab directly into his brain. He was in a room. A basement, judging by the concrete walls and the lack of windows. Medical equipment surrounded him, monitors and IV stands and a heart rate machine that beeped steadily in the corner. He was lying on what felt like a hospital bed, his wrists secured to the metal rails on either side. And sitting in a chair beside him, watching with an expression of tender concern, was Mara. "You're awake." Her voice was soft, gentle, as if she were speaking to a sick child. "I was worried I'd given you too much. It's hard to calculate dosages when you're working with someone else's prescription pad." Lucas tried to speak, but his throat was sandpaper. He managed a croak that might have been a word. Mara reached for a glass of water on the bedside table, holding the straw to his lips. "Here, drink. You must be so thirsty." Every instinct screamed at him not to trust anything she offered, but his body's need for hydration overrode his fear. He drank, feeling the cool water slide down his parched throat. "Better?" Mara smiled. "I know this must be confusing, scary even, but I need you to understand, Lucas. Everything I've done for us. There is no us." His voice came out hoarse but clear. "You're insane." If the words hurt her, she didn't show it. She simply tilted her head, regarding him with that same patient, loving expression. "You don't mean that. You're just confused because of the drugs. And because of her." Mara's face darkened for just a moment, a flash of something ugly beneath the pleasant mask. "Ava, she's been poisoning you against me for years. But she's gone now. I made sure of that." "She's not gone. I found her." Mara's smile flickered, just for a second. Then it was back, wider than before. But there was something forced about it now. "I know, I saw. That's why we're here, Lucas, because you didn't do what I asked. You were supposed to send her away. You were supposed to choose me." "I will never choose you." The words hung in the air between them. Mara stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood, smoothing down her skirt with deliberate precision. "You say that now, but you'll change your mind. I have time. I've waited 7 years. I can wait a little longer." She walked to a table in the corner where Lucas could see an array of bottles and syringes laid out in neat rows. His stomach lurched. "What is this place?" "My grandmother's house. She died 5 years ago and left it to me. It's been empty ever since, but I've been preparing it, for us, for our future." Mara selected a syringe, holding it up to the light. "I knew eventually we'd need somewhere private, somewhere we could be together without interruptions." "Mara, listen to me. You need help. Professional help. I can get you the best doctors, the best treatment, but you have to let me go." She laughed, a musical sound that sent chills down his spine. "Oh, Lucas, that's so sweet. You're still trying to save me even now. That's one of the things I love most about you, your kindness." She approached the bed, syringe in hand. Lucas pulled against his restraints, the metal cutting into his wrists. "This is just to help you sleep," Mara said soothingly. "You've had a traumatic day. Your body needs rest. Don't, please." But the needle was already sliding into his arm, and the cold spread of the drug followed almost immediately. The room began to blur, the edges softening into darkness. "Sleep now," Mara whispered, stroking his hair. "When you wake up, everything will be different. You'll see. You'll understand." The last thing Lucas heard before unconsciousness claimed him again was her voice, humming softly. A lullaby. the same one Ava used to sing to Noah. The darkness was not empty this time. It was filled with dreams. Nightmares, really, though they wore the faces of memories. He saw Ava on their wedding day, radiant in white, her eyes full of hope and love. He saw her holding newborn Noah in the hospital, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks as she counted his tiny fingers and toes. He saw her in the kitchen of their old apartment, flour on her nose, laughing at some joke he couldn't remember. And then the memories shifted, twisted, became something else. Ava on the street corner, skeletal and broken. Ava running from shadows that never stopped chasing her. Ava screaming his name as a car bore down on her, as bones cracked and blood pooled on cold asphalt. He woke with a gasp, his heart pounding against his ribs. The room was darker now, lit only by a single lamp in the corner. He had no idea how much time had passed. Hours? Days? His body felt wrong, heavy, and sluggish, like he was moving through water. He wasn't alone. Mara was there again, but this time she wasn't watching him. She was standing by the table, her back to him, doing something he couldn't see. When she turned around, she was holding a phone. His phone. "Your investigator keeps calling," she said conversationally. "Marcus Webb. He seems very worried about you. I've been texting him back, pretending to be you, telling him you're fine, that you decided to take another few days off." She smiled. "He doesn't suspect a thing. People will notice I'm missing. My son. My housekeeper. The police." "Your son is with his mother in that sad little motel room. Your housekeeper is on vacation. And the police?" Mara laughed. "The police think you're a grieving widower who's finally having a breakdown. I've been laying the groundwork for weeks, telling your colleagues how worried I am about you, how you've been acting strangely, how you've been talking about taking time away." Lucas stared at her, horror dawning as he understood the depth of her planning. "When you disappear," Mara continued, "everyone will think you snapped, that the stress finally got to you. Maybe they'll find your car at the edge of a cliff somewhere. Maybe they'll never find you at all. Either way, no one will be looking for you here." "And Ava? Noah?" Mara's expression hardened. "They'll be taken care of. Once you're gone, there's no reason for them to stay in Seattle. Ava will run again. It's what she does. And this time, she won't stop running until she's very, very far away." "You're going to kill them." "I'm going to remove obstacles." Mara's voice was cold, flat, utterly without remorse. "Ava had her chance. I gave her 3 years to disappear and stay disappeared, but she came back. She tried to take you from me again. And that's something I cannot allow." She pulled up a chair, sitting beside the bed like a visitor at a sick room. "Do you know how long I've loved you, Lucas? Do you have any idea how many years I've spent watching, waiting, planning? I don't want to know. 7 years. I first saw you at a tech conference in San Francisco. You were giving a presentation about your startup. You were so passionate, so brilliant, so alive. I knew right then that we were meant to be together." Lucas tried to remember that conference. It had been early in his career, before the company had taken off, before Ava, before any of this. He couldn't recall Mara being there at all. "I followed your career after that," she continued. "Read every article, every interview. I applied to work at your company, but the timing wasn't right, so I found another way. I became friends with the woman you were dating. I made myself indispensable to her." "Ava," Lucas breathed. "You became friends with Ava to get to me." She was so trusting, so naive. She actually believed I cared about her. Mara shook her head, a trace of contempt in her expression. "When she introduced us, I knew my patience had paid off. I just had to wait a little longer, wait for the right moment to remove her from the equation. The letters, the threats, it was all you. Of course, I knew Ava well enough to know she would do anything to protect her child. All I had to do was convince her that Noah was in danger, that leaving was the only way to save him." Mara smiled, proud of her own cleverness. "It worked perfectly. She vanished, you grieved, and I was right there to pick up the pieces. Why didn't you just make your move after she was gone? Why wait 3 years?" "Because you weren't ready." Mara's voice softened with something that might have been genuine emotion. "You were still in love with her, still hoping she'd come back. I could see it in your eyes every time someone mentioned her name. I needed to wait until you were truly ready to let go." I was never going to let go. I loved her. I still love her. Mara's face contorted, the pleasant mask slipping to reveal something savage underneath. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that. She stood abruptly, pacing the small room with agitated steps. I've done everything for you. Everything. I've given you 7 years of my life. I've sacrificed everything to be near you, to help you, to make you see that we belong together, and you still can't see it. You still can't see me. I see you clearly now, for the first time. You see a monster. Mara stopped pacing, turning to face him. That's what you think, isn't it? That I'm some kind of deranged stalker, some crazy woman who can't accept reality. The shoe fits. She moved fast, faster than he expected. Her hand connected with his face in a slap that made his ears ring. I am not crazy. Her voice was low, dangerous. I am the only person who has ever truly loved you. Ava loved your money, your success, the life you could give her. I loved you when you had nothing. I loved you before you were anyone. And I will love you long after she's rotting in the ground. Lucas tasted blood where he'd bitten his cheek. He forced himself to meet her eyes, to show no fear. You don't know what love is. And you do? You, who couldn't even tell your wife was being threatened for months. You, who let her suffer alone because you were too busy building your empire to notice? Mara leaned close, her breath hot on his face. I protected her. I protected both of you. Everything I did was to bring us to this moment. This moment? Where I'm handcuffed to a bed in your grandmother's basement? This is temporary, a necessary step. Once you understand, once you accept what we have, things will be different. We'll be happy. I'll make you happy, Lucas, happier than she ever could. She touched his face, her fingers gentle where her palm had been harsh. The contrast made his skin crawl. I'm going to help you see, she murmured. I'm going to break down every wall she built around your heart. And when I'm done, you'll love me the way I love you. Completely, absolutely, forever. The next few days blurred together in a haze of drugs and darkness. Mara kept him sedated most of the time, waking him only to force food and water down his throat or to share her twisted version of their history. She talked for hours sometimes, telling him about all the times she'd watched him from afar, all the small ways she'd inserted herself into his life, all the plans she'd made for their future. She had a house picked out, a place in the mountains far from Seattle where no one would find them. She had fake identities prepared, passports and documents that would allow them to disappear together. She had a timeline, a schedule for breaking down his resistance and rebuilding his loyalty. She had thought of everything. Except one thing. On what Lucas estimated was the 3rd day of his captivity, Mara made a mistake. She received a phone call that made her face go pale, and she left the room in a hurry, forgetting to administer his afternoon sedative. For the first time since waking up in this basement, Lucas found himself alone and clear-headed. He tested his restraints immediately. The handcuffs were good quality, police-grade, secured tightly around his wrists and looped through the metal rails of the bed. He couldn't slip free, couldn't break them. But the bed frame was old. He could feel it shifting slightly when he moved. Lucas began to work, pulling against the restraints in a steady, rhythmic motion. The metal groaned softly, and he froze, listening for any sign that Mara had heard. Nothing. He continued. Pull, rock, pull, rock. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His wrists screamed in protest as the handcuffs bit into already raw skin. He ignored the pain, focusing only on the small movements, the gradual weakening of the metal. Minutes passed, maybe hours. He lost track of time, lost track of everything except the need to get free. And then, with a soft screech of metal, the rail gave way. Lucas stared at his hand in disbelief. The handcuff was still attached to his wrist, but the rail it had been threaded through was now bent at an angle that allowed him to slip the chain free. One hand free, one to go. He attacked the other rail with renewed determination, the knowledge of freedom driving him forward. This one was stronger, more resistant, but desperation gave him strength he didn't know he had. When the second rail finally broke, Lucas nearly sobbed with relief. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, fighting a wave of dizziness as he stood for the first time in days. His body felt weak, wrong, the after effects of the drugs still clouding his system. But he forced himself to move, to put one foot in front of the other. The room had one door, currently closed. He pressed his ear against it, listening. Silence. Mara's voice, faint and distant, coming from somewhere upstairs. He tried the handle. Unlocked. She'd grown careless, confident in his sedation. The door opened onto a narrow hallway lined with more doors. Basement storage, probably. At the far end, a staircase led up to what looked like a normal house. Lucas could see daylight filtering down from above, and the sight of it made his chest ache with longing. He crept toward the stairs, every sense on high alert. The floorboards were old, prone to creaking, and he moved as carefully as he could, testing each step before putting his weight on it. Mara's voice grew clearer as he climbed. She was on the phone, her tone sharp with irritation. "I told you, he's fine. He just needs some time away from everything. No, I don't think that's necessary. Look, I'll have him call you tomorrow, okay? I'm sure he'll explain everything." She was covering for him, keeping up the illusion that everything was normal while she held him prisoner in her basement. Lucas reached the top of the stairs and found himself in a small kitchen. Through the window, he could see a yard, a fence, trees, civilization, freedom. He moved toward the back door, his hand reaching for the handle. Going somewhere? He spun around. Mara stood in the doorway to the living room, her phone still in her hand, her expression cold and hard. "You shouldn't be awake. I didn't give you your medicine." "I noticed." They stared at each other across the small kitchen, neither moving. "You can't leave, Lucas. There's nowhere for you to go. Even if you made it out of this house, even if you got to the police, what would you tell them? That your assistant kidnapped you? That she's been stalking you for years?" Mara shook her head slowly. "I've been planning this too long to let it fall apart now. I have contingencies, alibis, evidence that points to you as the unstable one, not me." "I don't care about evidence. I just want to get back to my family." "I am your family now." Mara's voice cracked, and for a moment Lucas saw something beneath the coldness, something desperate and wounded and broken. "Why can't you see that? Why can't you understand that I'm the one who loves you, that I'm the one who's always been there? You've been there like a parasite, feeding on my life, my relationships, my grief." Lucas shook his head. "You're sick, Mara. You need help." "I don't need help, I need you." She moved fast, lunging for a drawer beside the stove. When she turned back, she was holding a knife. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said, tears streaming down her face even as her grip on the weapon remained steady. "I wanted us to fall in love naturally. I wanted you to choose me because you wanted to, not because you had no other option. But you've left me no choice. If I can't have you willingly, I'll have you anyway." "Mara, put the knife down." No, I don't think I will." She advanced slowly, the blade catching the light from the window. "Maybe this is how it has to be. Maybe you need to see how far I'm willing to go, how much I'm willing to sacrifice. If you hurt me, you'll go to prison. For the rest of your life." "I don't care about prison. I don't care about anything except us." She lunged. Lucas threw himself sideways, crashing into the kitchen table. Chairs scattered. Something shattered. He felt the knife whistle past his ear, missing by inches. Mara recovered quickly, spinning to face him with the blade raised. "Stop fighting," she hissed. "Stop fighting and accept what we have." "We have nothing!" She screamed, a raw sound of fury and pain, and charged again. This time, Lucas was ready. He grabbed a chair and swung it up between them, and the knife embedded itself in the wooden seat with a solid thunk. Mara stared at the stuck blade, momentarily stunned. Lucas didn't hesitate. He shoved the chair forward, knocking her off balance, and ran for the door. His hand found the handle, turned it. The door swung open, and cool evening air rushed over his face like a blessing. He was 3 steps into the yard when something hit him from behind. Mara had tackled him, her slight frame somehow finding the strength to bring him down. They rolled across the grass, struggling, her nails raking at his face while he tried to pin her arms. "You're not leaving," she gasped. "You're never leaving. I won't let you." "It's over, Mara. Can't you see that? It's over." "It's not over until I say it's over." She reached for something in her pocket. Lucas saw the glint of metal and reacted on instinct, grabbing her wrist and twisting hard. A syringe fell to the grass. Another dose of whatever she'd been using to keep him sedated. Lucas kicked it away and rolled, pinning Mara beneath him, using his weight to hold her down. "It's over," he repeated, breathing hard. I'm going to the police. I'm going to tell them everything, and you're going to pay for what you did." Mara stared up at him, her chest heaving, her eyes wild. And then, slowly, horribly, she began to smile. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You'll never win, Lucas, because even if I go to prison, even if I spend the rest of my life behind bars, you'll never be free of me. Every time you look at your son, you'll think of me. Every time you hold your wife, you'll remember what I did to her. I'm in your head now. Forever." The sound of sirens cut through the evening air. Lucas looked up to see blue and red lights flashing at the end of the driveway. Car doors slamming, voices shouting, and running toward him across the lawn, his face tight with worry, was Marcus Webb. "Lucas, are you okay? We tracked your phone. We've been looking for you for 3 days." "I'm fine." Lucas looked down at Mara, still pinned beneath him, still smiling that terrible smile. "She's the one you want." Marcus gestured to the officers behind him, and they swarmed forward, pulling Lucas away and securing Mara in handcuffs. She went without a struggle, her eyes never leaving Lucas's face. "I love you," she called as they dragged her toward the waiting squad car. "I'll always love you, and someday you'll love me too. You'll see. You'll see." The car door slammed shut, cutting off her voice. Lucas watched it pull away, watched it disappear around the corner, and felt something inside him finally begin to unclench. Marcus was beside him, supporting his weight as the adrenaline faded and exhaustion took its place. "There's an ambulance on the way. You need to be checked out." "I need to call Ava. I need to tell her it's over." "It's not quite over yet." Marcus's expression was grim. "We found the storage unit and the basement where she was keeping you. The evidence is overwhelming. She's not getting out anytime soon." "How did you find me?" "Your phone. She was using it to text people, pretending to be you, but she made a mistake. She responded to a message from your son's daycare about a scheduling change. The problem is, your son hasn't been in daycare for a week." Lucas almost laughed. Almost. After all her meticulous planning, all her careful manipulation, Mara had been brought down by a scheduling email. "I need to see my family." "I know. We'll get you to the hospital first, make sure you're okay. Then I'll take you to them myself." The ambulance arrived and paramedics surrounded Lucas, checking his vitals, shining lights in his eyes, asking questions he could barely focus on. He answered on autopilot, his mind already hundreds of miles away, in a cheap motel room where his wife and son were waiting. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what he already suspected. He was dehydrated, malnourished, and still processing the remnants of whatever cocktail of drugs Mara had been pumping into his system. They wanted to keep him overnight for observation. Lucas refused. "I need to see my family, tonight, now." The doctor exchanged a look with Marcus, who shrugged. "He's been through hell. The best medicine for him right now is probably exactly what he's asking for." Reluctantly, the doctor agreed to release him with a list of warning signs to watch for and strict instructions to return if anything felt wrong. Nothing felt wrong. For the first time in 3 days, nothing felt wrong at all. Marcus drove him to the motel, the same cheap establishment where Lucas had left Ava and Noah a lifetime ago. The parking lot was mostly empty, the neon sign flickering in the gathering dusk. "Room 12, Marcus said, pulling up to the curb. "I called ahead. They know you're coming." Lucas opened the car door, then hesitated. "Thank you for everything." "It's my job." "It's more than that, and you know it." Marcus smiled, the first real smile Lucas had seen from him. "Go see your family. We can talk details tomorrow." Lucas walked to room 12, his legs unsteady, his heart pounding in his chest. He raised his hand to knock, but before his knuckles could touch the wood, the door flew open. Ava stood there, her face pale, her eyes red from crying, her whole body trembling with relief and fear and love. "Lucas! Oh my God, Lucas!" She threw herself into his arms, and he held her like he would never let go, held her while she sobbed against his chest, and he fought back tears of his own. "I'm here," he murmured into her hair. "I'm okay. It's over. I thought I'd lost you. When Marcus called and said you were missing, that she had you, I was so scared. I know, but it's over now. She's in custody. She can't hurt us anymore." "Daddy?" The small voice came from inside the room. Lucas looked up to see Noah standing in the doorway, his stuffed dinosaur clutched to his chest, his blue eyes wide with confusion and hope. "Hey, buddy!" Lucas released Ava just enough to kneel down and open his arms. "Come here." Noah ran to him, nearly knocking him over with the force of his small body slamming into Lucas's chest. Lucas gathered his son up, breathing in the scent of him, feeling the rapid flutter of his tiny heart. "You came back," Noah whispered. "You promised, and you came back." "I'll always come back," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "No matter what, I'll always come back to you." They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them huddled together in the doorway of a cheap motel room, holding on to each other as if the world might try to tear them apart again at any moment. Eventually, they moved inside. Lucas sat on the edge of the bed, Noah on his lap, Ava pressed against his side. The room was cramped and ugly and perfect because it held everyone he loved. "What happens now?" Ava asked quietly. "Now we go home. We rebuild. We heal. And Mara? She'll stand trial. Marcus says the evidence is overwhelming. She's not getting out of prison for a very, very long time." Ava shivered. "I still can't believe it. All those years she was right there, pretending to be my friend, pretending to care about us. And the whole time." "I know, I feel the same way." Lucas pulled her closer. "But we can't let her win. We can't let what she did define our lives. She wanted to destroy us, Ava. She wanted to tear our family apart and remake it in her own twisted image. The best revenge is proving her wrong, living our lives, being happy despite everything she did. Can we be happy after all this?" Lucas looked at his wife, really looked at her. She was still too thin, still too fragile, still carrying the scars of 3 years of terror. But there was strength in her eyes too, a resilience that had kept her alive through unimaginable suffering. "I think so," he said. "I think we can be anything we want to be, as long as we're together." Noah had fallen asleep against his chest, exhausted by the emotion of the past few days. Lucas carefully laid him on the bed, tucking the blanket around his small body. "He missed you so much," Ava said softly. "He kept asking when you were coming back. I didn't know what to tell him." "You told him I'd come back, and I did. But what if you hadn't? What if she'd—" Ava couldn't finish the sentence. "Don't." Lucas took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Don't think about what ifs. We could drive ourselves crazy with what ifs. What matters is what is. And what is right now is that we're all here. We're all safe. And we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time." Ava stared at him for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too. I never stopped." They held each other as the night deepened around them, as their son slept peacefully beside them, as the nightmare that had haunted their lives for 3 years finally began to fade. It wasn't over. Lucas knew that. There would be trials and testimony, lawyers and reporters, the long, slow process of justice working its way through the system. There would be therapy and healing, setbacks and breakthroughs, days when the trauma felt fresh and raw, and days when it seemed like a distant memory. But they would face all of it together. And that, Lucas realized, was what Mara had never understood. Love wasn't about possession or obsession. It wasn't about control or manipulation. It was about showing up, day after day, choosing each other even when it was hard. It was about building something stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger than all the darkness the world could throw at you. Mara had spent 7 years trying to tear them apart. She had failed. And as Lucas drifted off to sleep with his family in his arms, he knew with absolute certainty that she would never have another chance. The monster wearing a friendly smile was finally behind bars. And his family was finally free. The first month was the hardest. Lucas brought Ava and Noah back to the mansion 3 days after his escape. Once the police had finished documenting the crime scene at Mara's grandmother's house, and Marcus had confirmed that every security system was upgraded, every entrance monitored, every possible threat assessed and neutralized. The house that had once felt like a prison of memories now became something else entirely. A sanctuary. A starting point. But healing, Lucas quickly learned, was not a straight line. Ava couldn't sleep in the master bedroom. The space was too big, too exposed, with too many windows that looked out onto the darkness. She would lie awake for hours, her body rigid beside him, flinching at every sound, every creak of the old house settling. More than once, Lucas woke to find her standing at the window, staring out at the yard as if expecting to see a figure watching from the shadows. "I keep thinking she's out there," Ava whispered one night when he came to stand beside her. "I know she's in jail. I know the doors are locked and the alarm is set. But my body doesn't believe it. My body still thinks I need to run." Lucas didn't try to reassure her with words. Words felt hollow, inadequate in the face of 3 years of trauma. Instead, he simply took her hand and stood with her, watching the empty yard together until the sky began to lighten and her shoulders finally relaxed. They moved into the guest house at Ava's request. It was smaller, cozier, with only one entrance and windows that looked out onto the garden rather than the street. She could see anyone approaching from any angle. She could control the space. "I feel safe here," she told him, and the simple words meant more than any grand gesture could have. Noah adapted faster than either of them expected. Children, Lucas realized, were remarkably resilient. His son accepted his mother's return with the unquestioning faith of a 3-year-old, integrating her into his daily routine as if she had never been gone. Within a week, he was demanding that Mama read his bedtime stories instead of Daddy. Within 2 weeks, he was crawling into her lap whenever he needed comfort, his small arms wrapping around her neck, as if he could hold her in place by sheer force of will. "He's afraid I'll leave again," Ava said one evening after Noah had finally fallen asleep. "He won't let me out of his sight." "Can you blame him?" "No. But I don't know how to convince him that I'm not going anywhere. I don't know how to make him feel safe when I barely feel safe myself." Lucas pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Time. That's all we can give him. Time and consistency, and showing up every single day until he believes it. What if time isn't enough? What if I've already broken something that can't be fixed?" "You haven't broken anything. You survived. You came back. That's what matters." Ava pulled away, turning to face him. In the dim light of the guest house, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Sometimes I don't feel like I survived. Sometimes I feel like I died 3 years ago, and what came back is just a ghost, a shadow of who I used to be. Then we'll rebuild you, piece by piece, however long it takes." "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple. It's going to be the hardest thing either of us has ever done. But I'm not going anywhere, Ava. I chose you the day I married you, and I choose you now, every day, no matter what." She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for something. Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her because she finally nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Okay, we rebuild. Together." The therapy began the following week. Lucas had found the best trauma specialist in Seattle, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who came highly recommended by Marcus Webb. She worked with both of them, separately and together, helping them process the years of fear and grief and anger that had accumulated like scar tissue around their hearts. For Ava, the sessions were grueling. She had to revisit every horror, every moment of terror, every decision she had made in the name of protecting her family. She had to confront the guilt that had been eating at her for 3 years, the belief that she had abandoned her husband and son when they needed her most. "You didn't abandon them," Dr. Chen said during one session that Lucas was allowed to attend. "You made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. You chose to protect your child's life over your own happiness. That's not abandonment, that's sacrifice." "It doesn't feel like sacrifice, it feels like failure." That's the trauma talking. Trauma tells us lies about ourselves. It tells us we're weak when we're strong. It tells us we made the wrong choice when there was no right choice. Part of healing is learning to recognize those lies and replace them with truth. For Lucas, the sessions focused on different wounds: the grief of losing his wife, which he had never fully processed because he had been too busy surviving; the guilt of not noticing the danger signs, of not protecting Ava when she needed him most; the anger, white-hot and terrifying, that surged through him whenever he thought about what Mara had done. Anger is a normal response to trauma, Dr. Chen told him, but it can become toxic if we hold on to it too long. The goal isn't to stop being angry. The goal is to find healthy ways to express that anger and eventually to let it go. How do I let go of anger at someone who nearly destroyed my family? By refusing to let her control you anymore. Every moment you spend consumed by rage is a moment she wins. Every day you choose to focus on your family instead of her is a day you take your power back. It was good advice. Simple in theory, impossibly difficult in practice. But Lucas tried. Every day, he tried. The family dinners helped. It started as Ava's idea, a way to create new rituals that didn't carry the weight of the past. Every evening at 6 o'clock, no matter what else was happening, they would sit down together at the small table in the guest house and share a meal. Sometimes it was elaborate, dishes that Ava remembered how to cook from before. Sometimes it was takeout pizza or sandwiches thrown together in 5 minutes. The food didn't matter. What mattered was the togetherness. Noah loved it. He would chatter about his day, about the bugs he had found in the garden, about the dreams he had the night before, about anything and everything that crossed his 3-year-old mind. Ava and Lucas would listen, would ask questions, would laugh at his observations and marvel at his growing vocabulary. "Mama, why does the moon follow us when we drive?" "It doesn't really follow us, sweetheart. It just looks that way because it's so far away." "But it moves when we move." "It seems like it moves, but it's actually standing still. We're the ones moving." Noah considered this with the gravity of a philosopher pondering the nature of existence. "I think the moon is my friend. It wants to make sure I get home safe." Ava's eyes glistened, but she smiled. "I think you're right, baby. The moon is definitely your friend." Lucas watched these exchanges with a heart so full it ached. This was what Mara had tried to destroy. This simple, beautiful, ordinary life. And she had failed. Despite everything, she had failed. The nightmares came less frequently as the weeks passed, but they didn't stop entirely. Ava would wake gasping, clutching at the sheets, her eyes wild with terror until she recognized where she was. Lucas would hold her through the worst of it, whispering reassurances until her breathing slowed and her body stopped trembling. "I dreamed she found us," Ava would say sometimes. "I dreamed she got out of prison and came for Noah. She's not getting out. She confessed to everything. She's going away for a very long time." I know that logically, but the dreams don't care about logic." "No, they don't." One night, about 6 weeks after their return, Ava woke not from a nightmare but from a different kind of dream. She lay still for a long moment, staring at the ceiling, her expression unreadable. "Lucas? Are you awake?" "I am now." "I dreamed about our wedding, the real one, I mean, before everything went wrong." Lucas propped himself up on his elbow, watching her face in the moonlight that filtered through the curtains. "What about it?" "I dreamed about the vows, the promises we made." She turned to look at him. "Do you remember what you said?" "I said I would love you in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad, for as long as we both shall live." You kept that promise, even when you thought I was dead, even when everyone told you to move on. You kept loving me. I couldn't have stopped if I tried. Ava reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the lines of exhaustion that had become permanent fixtures over the past 3 years. "I want to renew our vows," she said softly. "Not now, not until we're both stronger, but someday. I want to stand in front of our friends and family and promise you again, I want to choose you the way you chose me." Lucas felt tears prick at his eyes. He blinked them back, but his voice was thick when he answered. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be there." "I know you will. That's why I love you." She pulled him down to her, and they held each other as the night deepened around them. Outside, the moon hung full and bright, watching over them like an old friend. The breakthrough came on a stormy night in early December. Noah had been put to bed hours ago, his small body exhausted from a day of playing in the garden. Ava and Lucas were sitting in the living room of the guest house, listening to the rain hammer against the windows, when Ava suddenly stood up. "I need to go outside." Lucas looked at her in confusion. "It's pouring." "I know, I need to feel it." She was already moving toward the door. Lucas followed, concern and curiosity warring in his chest. Ava stepped out onto the porch, then walked down the steps into the garden. Within seconds, she was drenched, her hair plastered to her face, her clothes clinging to her thin frame. She tilted her head back and let the rain fall on her face, her arms spread wide as if embracing the storm. Lucas watched from the porch, not understanding but unwilling to interfere. And then Ava began to cry. It wasn't the quiet tears she had shed before, the controlled grief of someone trying to hold herself together. This was something deeper, something primal. Great racking sobs that shook her whole body, that seemed to come from the very core of her being. Lucas ran to her without thinking, gathering her into his arms as the rain soaked through his own clothes. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his back, her face pressed against his chest. "I'm so broken," she gasped between sobs. "I'm so broken, Lucas. I don't know how to be whole again. I don't know how to be the person I was before." "You don't have to be the person you were before. You just have to be the person you are now." "But what if that person is too damaged? What if I can never be a real wife to you again, a real mother to Noah?" Lucas pulled back, taking her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes through the rain and the tears. "Listen to me. You are already a real wife. You are already a real mother. The fact that you're standing here, fighting to heal, fighting to be present for your family, that's what makes you real. That's what makes you strong." "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding on." "Then hold on to me. I'll be strong enough for both of us until you find your own strength again." Ava stared at him, rain streaming down her face, her eyes searching his for any trace of doubt or hesitation. She found none. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. "Even when I was hiding, even when I thought I'd never see you again. You were the reason I kept fighting, you and Noah." "I know. I always knew." "How? How could you possibly know?" "Because I felt the same way. Because even when I thought you were dead, I couldn't let go of you. Because love like ours doesn't die just because circumstances try to kill it." Ava's face crumpled, and she fell against him, her sobs quieting into something softer, something that felt more like release than despair. They stood there in the rain for a long time, holding each other as the storm raged around them, two broken people learning how to breathe again. And when they finally went back inside, soaked to the bone but somehow lighter than they had been in years, Lucas knew that the worst was behind them. The road ahead would still be difficult. There would still be setbacks and struggles, but they would face them together, as a family, as they were always meant to be. 3 months changed everything. The guest house that had once been a refuge became a cocoon, and from within its walls, a family slowly, painstakingly, emerged transformed. Ava gained weight, her cheeks filling out, her eyes losing that haunted, hollow quality that had broken Lucas's heart every time he looked at her. She started gardening again, coaxing life from the soil the way she was coaxing life back into herself, spending hours in the sunshine with dirt under her fingernails and peace settling into her bones. Noah flourished. He had stopped clinging to his mother with desperate intensity, his fear of her disappearance fading as day after day, week after week, she remained. He called her Mama now without hesitation, without the questioning upturn that had marked those first uncertain reunions. The word came naturally, easily, as if the 3 years of separation had been nothing more than a bad dream half remembered upon waking. Lucas watched his family heal and felt something heal inside himself as well. The rage that had consumed him in those first weeks after Mara's arrest slowly transformed into something else. Not forgiveness, exactly. He would never forgive what she had done, but acceptance. An understanding that dwelling on her crimes would only give her power she didn't deserve. She had wanted to define his life. He refused to let her. The trial came and went in late February. Lucas and Ava both testified, their voices steady as they recounted the horror of the past 3 years. Mara sat at the defense table, her expression blank, her eyes never leaving Lucas's face. She didn't speak in her own defense. Her lawyer entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, but the jury didn't buy it. The psychiatric evaluations had been clear. Mara knew exactly what she was doing. She knew it was wrong. She simply didn't care. The verdict came after only 4 hours of deliberation. Guilty on all counts: stalking, kidnapping, assault, Attempted murder. The judge sentenced her to 45 years without the possibility of parole. When the gavel fell, Mara finally spoke. She turned to Lucas, her eyes bright with something that might have been tears or might have been madness, and she said the words that would haunt him for weeks to come. "I'll wait for you. However long it takes. I'll wait." Lucas didn't respond. He took Ava's hand, and together they walked out of the courtroom into the pale winter sunshine. They didn't look back. That night, after Noah was asleep, Ava found Lucas standing on the porch of the guest house, staring up at the stars. "Are you okay?" He considered the question. "I don't know. I thought I would feel relieved when it was over. Triumphant, maybe. But I just feel tired." "That's normal." Dr. Chen said the end of a trauma doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a transition. We're moving from one chapter to another. "And what chapter are we moving into?" Ava came to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. "The chapter where we get to choose what happens next. No more reacting to what she did. No more surviving. Now we get to actually live." Lucas looked at her, at this woman who had endured the unimaginable and come out the other side still capable of hope, still capable of love. She was different from the woman he had married, shaped by suffering into someone stronger, more resilient. But underneath, in the places that mattered, she was still Ava, still his. "I want to take you somewhere," he said. "Where?" "You'll see. Tomorrow. Just the two of us. Mrs. Chen can watch Noah." Ava studied his face, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Is this some kind of surprise?" "Something like that." She smiled, and the sight of it still had the power to make his heart stutter in his chest. "Okay, I trust you." The next morning, Lucas drove them to a small nursery on the outskirts of the city. Ava looked confused as they pulled into the gravel parking lot, surrounded by rows of potted plants and flowering shrubs. "A garden center? This is your surprise." "Part of it. Come on." He led her through the nursery to a quiet corner in the back, where an elderly man was tending to a collection of rose bushes. The man looked up as they approached, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "Mr. Grant? Right on time." "Ava, this is Henry. He's been cultivating roses for 50 years. I asked him to create something special for us." Henry gestured to a bush set apart from the others, its branches heavy with blooms in a color Ava had never seen before. They weren't quite pink and weren't quite white, but something in between, with edges that darkened to a deep rose at the tips of each petal. "I call it the Phoenix Rose," Henry said. "It took me 2 years to develop. Mr. Grant commissioned it shortly after you came home. He said he wanted something that represented rebirth, something beautiful growing from ashes." Ava's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. "It's yours," Lucas said softly. "Henry's going to plant it in our garden. Every spring it'll bloom, and every spring we'll remember. Not the bad things, not the pain. We'll remember that we survived, that we came back to each other." "Lucas..." Ava couldn't find words. She turned to him, tears streaming down her cheeks, and threw her arms around his neck. "I don't deserve you. You deserve everything. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." Henry discreetly stepped away, giving them their moment. Lucas held Ava in the quiet of the nursery, surrounded by growing things, by life pushing up from the soil, and he felt the last broken piece of himself click into place. They planted the Phoenix Rose that afternoon, in a sunny corner of the garden where Ava could see it from the guest house window. Noah helped, his small hands patting the soil around the base of the bush with solemn concentration. "What's it called, Daddy?" "It's called the Phoenix Rose. Do you know what a phoenix is?" Noah shook his head. "It's a magical bird that lives for a very long time, and when it gets old, it bursts into flames and turns to ashes. But then, from those ashes, a new phoenix is born, stronger and more beautiful than before." Noah considered this with the gravity that only a 3-year-old could muster. "Like Mama?" Lucas and Ava exchanged a look, surprised by their son's perception. "Yes, baby," Ava said softly, kneeling down to meet his eyes. "Exactly like Mama." "I'm glad you came back from the ashes," Noah said. And then, with the lightning-quick mood shifts of childhood, he jumped up and ran toward the swing set, his attention already elsewhere. Ava watched him go, a bittersweet smile on her face. He understands more than we give him credit for. Kids always do. Spring arrived slowly, tentatively, as if testing whether the world was ready for warmth again. The phoenix rose bloomed exactly as Henry had promised, its unique petals catching the light in ways that seemed almost magical. Ava spent hours in the garden, cultivating other plants to complement it, building something beautiful from the scorched earth of her past. The nightmares faded to occasional disturbances, then to rare occurrences, then to memories that no longer had the power to shake her awake in terror. She started sleeping in the main house again, in the master bedroom with its wide windows and open spaces. The vulnerability that had once terrified her became something else, a reminder that she was no longer hiding, no longer running. Lucas scaled back his involvement in Grant Technologies, promoting capable people to handle the day-to-day operations so he could focus on what mattered most. He was there for breakfast every morning. He was there for family dinners every evening. He was there for bedtime stories and scraped knees and the 1,000 small moments that made up a life. "You're different," Ava told him one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Softer, somehow. More present. I was asleep before, going through the motions, building an empire to fill the hole where you used to be." Lucas shook his head. "It took losing you to realize that all the success in the world means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with. You didn't lose me. I was always there, even when you couldn't see me, loving you from a distance, praying you'd find happiness even if I couldn't be part of it. I never could have found happiness without you. I tried. God knows I tried. But you were the missing piece. You always have been." Ava leaned her head against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the day fade into night. It was Lucas who brought up the vow renewal on a quiet evening in early May when the phoenix rose was in full bloom and the air was thick with the scent of flowers. "I've been thinking about what you said, that night in the rain, about renewing our vows." Ava looked up from the book she was reading, surprise flickering across her face. "You remembered that. I remember everything you say." He moved to sit beside her on the couch, taking her hands in his. "I know we talked about waiting until we were stronger, but I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to put our life on hold for some hypothetical future when we feel ready. I want to choose you now, today, every day." "Lucas, I'm not proposing marriage. We're already married. What I'm proposing is a promise, a new beginning, a chance to say the words we meant to say before everything went wrong and mean them even more because of everything we've survived." Tears glistened in Ava's eyes, but she was smiling. "What kind of ceremony did you have in mind? Something small, just us and Noah, maybe Marcus and Dr. Chen, the people who helped us get here." He paused. "Unless you want something bigger. I'll give you whatever you want." Ava shook her head. "Small is perfect, intimate. It's not about showing the world. It's about us. Then we'll do it here, in the garden, surrounded by everything we've built together." "When?" Lucas smiled. "How about next month, June 23rd, the anniversary of the day I found you on that street corner?" Ava's breath caught. "You want to reclaim that day? Turn it into something beautiful instead of something terrible?" "That's exactly what I want. That's what the phoenix does, isn't it? Takes the ashes of the past and transforms them into something new." For a long moment, Ava simply looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes to all of it. Yes to you. Yes to us. Yes to whatever comes next." The weeks leading up to June 23rd passed in a flurry of preparations. Nothing elaborate, nothing ostentatious, just the careful cultivation of a perfect moment. Ava chose a simple white dress that flowed around her ankles like water. Lucas bought a new suit, then decided it was too formal and opted for slacks and a button-down shirt instead. Noah was fitted for a tiny suit of his own, complete with a bow tie that he found endlessly fascinating. "I'm the ring bearer," he announced proudly to anyone who would listen. "That means I carry the rings. It's a very important job." Marcus agreed to serve as a witness, his gruff exterior softening whenever he saw how far the family had come since those dark days in the motel room. Dr. Chen was invited as well, her presence a reminder of the work they had done to get here, the battles they had fought within themselves. The morning of June 23rd dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect early summer day that felt like a gift. Ava woke before the sun, too excited to sleep, and found Lucas already awake beside her. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified. In the best possible way." They held hands in the pre-dawn darkness, listening to the birds begin their morning chorus, savoring the quiet before the day truly began. The ceremony took place at sunset, in the garden beside the Phoenix Rose. Paper lanterns hung from the trees, casting a warm glow over the small gathering. Noah stood at the front, his expression solemn with the weight of his responsibilities, the rings clutched in his small hands. There was no officiant. They had decided to speak their vows to each other directly, without intermediaries, without scripts. Just two people who had been through hell and found their way back to each other. Lucas went first. "Ava, 4 years ago, I stood in front of you and promised to love you forever. I meant it then, but I didn't understand what forever really meant. I thought forever was easy. I thought love was something that just happened to you, like weather or fate." He paused, gathering himself. "I was wrong. Love isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose. Every day. Every moment. It's choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It's choosing to fight when giving up would be simpler. It's choosing each other over and over again, even when the world tries to tear you apart." His voice cracked, but he pushed through. "I choose you, Ava. Not because you're perfect, not because our life is easy. I choose you because you're the bravest person I've ever known, because you sacrificed everything to protect our son, because even when you were broken and starving and alone, you never stopped fighting to come back to us." He took her hands, his eyes bright with tears. "I don't promise you forever. Forever is too big, too abstract. What I promise is today, and tomorrow, and every day after that, for as long as I'm breathing. I promise to choose you, to love you, to be worthy of the miracle of having you in my life." Ava wiped her eyes, her smile radiant despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "My turn?" "Your turn." She took a deep breath. "Lucas, when I was hiding, when I was starving on the streets and sleeping in shelters and wondering if I would ever see you again, I had one thing that kept me going. One image in my mind that I would hold on to when everything else was too dark to bear." She squeezed his hands. "It was you. Not the successful CEO. Not the brilliant entrepreneur. Just you, standing in our kitchen in your pajamas, making terrible coffee and humming off-key while the sun came through the window. That's the man I fell in love with. That's the man I never stopped loving, not for a single moment of those 3 terrible years." Her voice strengthened, certainty replacing the tremor. "I was so afraid when I came back. Afraid that you wouldn't want me. Afraid that I was too broken, too damaged, too changed by everything I'd been through. But you looked at me like I was still the same woman you married. You held me like I was precious. You chose me, even when choosing me was hard." She stepped closer, close enough to feel his breath on her face. "So here's my promise. I will never leave you again. No matter what threatens us, no matter what darkness tries to come between us, I will stand beside you. I will fight beside you. I will love you with everything I have and everything I am from this moment until my last breath." She pressed her forehead to his. "I choose you, Lucas, today, and tomorrow, and forever." Noah stepped forward, holding out the rings with the gravity of a knight presenting a sacred artifact. Lucas and Ava each took one, sliding them onto fingers that had worn wedding bands before, but somehow felt like they were doing this for the first time. "You may kiss," Noah announced, clearly pleased with himself for remembering this part of the ceremony. And they did. A kiss that was soft and fierce and full of promise, watched by the few people who mattered most and by the Phoenix Rose blooming behind them, its petals catching the last light of the setting sun. Afterward, there was cake and champagne and laughter that rang through the garden like music. Noah fell asleep on a blanket under the stars, his bow tie askew, his face peaceful. Marcus made a toast that was gruff and awkward and surprisingly moving. Dr. Chen hugged them both and told them how proud she was of how far they had come. And when the last guest had gone and the lanterns had burned down to embers, Lucas and Ava stood alone in their garden, their son sleeping beside them, their future spreading out before them like an unwritten story. "We made it," Ava whispered. "We did. I never thought we would. All those nights when I was hiding, all those moments when I was sure I would never see you again, I never let myself believe that this was possible. And now?" She turned to look at him, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the dying lanterns. "Now I believe in everything, in us, in our family, in the possibility of happiness after so much pain." She reached up to touch his face. "You gave me that. You gave me back my faith in the world." Lucas pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, feeling her heart beat against his chest. "You're home," he murmured into her hair. "We all are." And they were. The broken family, rebuilt stronger than before. The phoenix, risen from the ashes. The love story that refused to end, no matter how hard the world tried to tear it apart. They had lost 3 years. They had lost trust and innocence, and the naive belief that bad things only happen to other people. But they had gained something too. A love tested by fire and proven true. A family forged in suffering and tempered by grace. A future that belonged to them and them alone. The nightmare was over. The rest of their lives was just beginning. And somewhere in the garden, the phoenix rose swayed gently in the evening breeze, its petals glowing in the moonlight, a testament to the beautiful truth that from the deepest ashes, the most magnificent things can grow.